Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you for joining me. Before we get started, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already clicked subscribe, please do. I'm trying to reach a goal of 1,000 subscribers and it would really help if you could subscribe. Today we're going to take a look at a brand new release from former Quiet Riot singer Paul Shortino and his band Shortino, and a new album called Make-A-Wish. This album just came out April 24th of 2020 in Japan only at the moment. I'm hoping it gets a wider release, but right now this is a Japanese only release. Paul Shortino got a start in Rough Cutt in 1982. The band is probably most well known for some of the famous members that came through the ranks while the band was forming. Dave Alford, Matt Thorne, and Chris Hager were all early members of Rat, either under the name Rat or Mickey Rat, along with Stephen Pearcy, before joining Rough Cutt. J.K. Lee, who was also an early member of Rat, of course, he later goes on to play with Ozzy Osbourne. Craig Goldie, who later goes on to play Dio, and Claude Schnell, who also goes on to play with Dio. So all of those guys were early members of Rough Cutt. The band signed to Warner Brothers in 1984. Now, after waiting around for nearly a year to work with Ted Templeman, who signed them, who's famed for having worked with Van Halen, they gave up on that and actually worked with Tom Allom, who'd worked with Motley Crue, to record their debut and released it in 1985. Their follow-up album, this one here, Rough Cutt Wants You, which came out in 1986, was produced by Jack Douglas, who had worked with Aerosmith. Now, at that point, Wendy Dio, who had a hand in his management, orchestrated a deal for Paul Shortino to join Quiet Riot. Now, at the time, though, it was to be a new project. It wasn't to be Quiet Riot. They were looking to do something that was more soulful. And the release that actually came out, QR, was just that. It was a much more soulful sounding and a departure from what everyone knew in the Quiet Riot camp as to what the band had previously sounded like. But of course, the way politics are in record labels and things like that, the record label wouldn't release it under a different name. They wanted Quiet Riot, so it had to come out under that, hence the album that it was, QR. And that came out in 1988, and so despite the lead single on it, Stay With Me Tonight, the album just didn't do much. It didn't have much of an impact, and ultimately the band broke up at that point. Now, following that, Paul Shortino worked with J.K. Northrup, who had been in King Kobra, and they recorded this album in 1993. He also did another project called Bad Boys at that time as well. But this one here with J.K. Northrup came out in 93, and then just about 10 years later in 2004, they did a follow-up called Afterlife. But prior to that, in 1997, he formed his own group under the name Shortino, and they released this album, It's About Time. Now, following that, in 2002, he attempted to reactivate Rough Cutt, but he did it under the simpler moniker of just The Cut, and they recorded one album called Sacred Place. It's very hard to come by. If you can find that album, hang on to it, or if you have it, hang on to it. But following that, he then did another Shortino album, 2009's Chasing My Dream. And in 2011, then he joins King Kobra, and he releases two albums with them. He does the self-titled album in 2011, and then a follow-up simply called Two that came out in 2013. And then in 2015, he recorded one album with the Michael Kosen Group, which brings us to where we are today for this 2020 release called Make-A-Wish that he's just put out. Now, this album is done as a collaboration with a Japanese guitarist who's got some notoriety behind him. His name is Nozomu Wakai. I'm not sure if I'm saying that 100% correctly. It's the best I can do with the pronunciation on it. But he has a band called Destina, and their most recent album called Metal Souls features Ronnie Romero on lead vocals. He's the current lead vocalist in Rainbow, and Ronnie Romero's popping up in a lot of different bands. A group called the Ferrymen, that he's in, and Corleone and a few others out there. He just seems to be a very in-demand vocalist right now. But the band also has Marco Mendoza on bass and Tommy Aldridge on drums. So this guitar player, Nozumu, is no stranger to working with big names, certainly like Paul Shortino. And the opening track and lead single on this album, Send in the Clowns, it's actually a cover song of a Judy Collins song, and it's not something you would typically expect him doing. And I don't know if that has to do with his lifestyle. He's living in Las Vegas right now, and sort of the big pomp that's in Las Vegas and that it's known for. But even though you wouldn't think this song would work, it totally does. It's been arranged in an amazing way with just some really ripping guitars and things on it. Some time changes and things on it that just work out beautifully. Now, the song was originally recorded in 2009 for comedian Carrot Top's show, and it featured Vinnie Paul of Pantera on drums. This is a reworking of it. Vinnie Paul's drumming is still on this track, but it is a reworking with Nozumu on guitars on this. And then also of interest is that two of the songs on this album actually come from the album Chasing My Dream from 2009, the song Nocturnal and Empty Promises. I'm not really sure why they've been reworked here. Maybe you just really like those tracks, but those two songs do repeat on here. The other thing of note is that there's a number of really great guest players on here. As I mentioned, Vinnie Paul of Pantera is on here, Marco Mendoza from Thin Lizzy and the Dead Daisies, Uriah Duffy from White Snake, Peter Baltz from Europe, Phil Sassoon from Beggars and Thieves, Jay Shalin from Asia and Unruly Child, Carlos Cavazo from Quiet Riot and Rat, Rowan Robertson from Dio, and Doug Aldridge, also of Dio, Whitesnake, and the Dead Daisies. So just a number of really amazing musicians are on here, sort of padding everything out along with Paul and Nozumu, who's on guitars. Some of the standout tracks on this that I really like, track number 1, Send in the Clowns, as I said. It's a very cool cover of the song, a lot of flair, some really cool breaks and time changes in it. Check out the music video that has Carrot Top in it, and also Tabitha Stevens, former porn stars in that. Both of them dressed up as clowns in this, so pretty interesting. Track number 3 I really like, called Bluff. It's got a really big over-the-top chorus, and just lyrically it's very fitting for Paul living in Las Vegas now. I can understand why he's written this track. Track 6, Eyes of the Wizard, another really big chorus. It's got some gang-style vocals on it that I really like, and some just absolute blistering guitar work throughout, some real noodling on here by Nozumu on guitars. Track 9, Missing, is also really good. It's just a nice chugging straight ahead rocker, again with some really cool riffing on this. So here's the front cover of this. Not a lot in the way of the artwork. On the back side you can see all the different musicians that are written out on there. When we open this up, that's the inside of this, and if I pop that off, there's nothing really behind it there. And then I'll pull out the booklet, and I'll slip out of it. It's got the typical Japanese insert booklet, and I'm not going to thumb through all of that because it's all in Japanese, but you have that. And then you do have the regular booklet, which has some great shots of Paul and Nozumu, the guitar player, and breakdown of the tracks there. And then it does go through, it's got a cool picture there with Vinnie Paul. It does have all the lyrics in here. And then, the back of it there with some more info on it. Now, sort of in closing, the bottom line of this thing, in my opinion, it's worth it alone for just that lead single, Send in the Clowns. I just think that song and the way that it's arranged is really, really well done, and it just sucked me right in from the start. I think if you're a Rough Cutt fan, or a Paul Shortino fan, you're gonna really like this. If you're a fan of guitar shredding, you're gonna really like this record. My only complaint is the mix is a little muddy, and I found that Paul's vocals are often in the back instead of being up front. They sort of get buried a little bit. Case in point, if you know the music video for the song Rising Sun, you'll note that those vocals are more to the back of that. But I really hope this gets a much wider release. I think it's really well done and some of the best work that Paul has done, and just some absolute amazing guitar noodling that's on this thing. All right, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, and I hope everyone has a great day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.